Howdy, it's Cody from the Keepers of Nerdom. How are you all? So today's video is going to be about Star Trek. The reason being is because we just watched last night episode 8 of Strange New Worlds. I believe it was called Kingdom of Elysium. And let me just tell you this. That episode was perfection, and it got me onto a kick that is always a kick for me. But first off, a little spoilers on the Kingdom of Elysium. It is very much an original series episode. It is that good. It is an episode that is totally focused in on this idea of silly, crazy things. It's a fairy tale essentially, and they're all playing characters in the fairy tale. And quite frankly, it's fantastic for that. So good, and like they just use the fairy tale setting by putting draperies and stuff and bushes and things around the Enterprise. Fantastic. It's a great story that has a really good payoff in the end. My concern coming out of that is because of the resolution, it may not have a great payoff for the character in the long term, because we may not care about this character as much. I don't know. But I'll be honest, there are very few things that make me tear up. The exception in that is Disney Pixar films, especially like Coco. I cannot watch that. I will cry like a little baby. And it's ridiculous. I don't know why. But that episode, I was tearing up at the end because it did a great job of paying off stuff in the show. So it got me thinking about something that always I get excited about is starships, especially in Star Trek, because the Federation starships in Star Trek, especially the older style, is fantastic. The new stuff since Discovery, it struggles. And even the newer stuff from the new Star Trek movies with Christopher Pine and things like that, they've taken a new aesthetic, and oftentimes it has not improved upon what was. You know, Discovery was a starship design that was rejected. And just because a ship is rejected does not make it bad by any means, because there's some ships I'm going to show you today that are designs. And so that's an important thing. But starship design is so important to me because I love the concept and looking at it, because Star Trek loves this certain aesthetic for Klingons and Romulans and the Federation and the Dominion, the Borg. And these are important details. These are so fascinating. So I want to take a quick journey through Star Trek starships, all the way from the original series up to really Enterprise in some ways, just to talk about those things. And so let's go through those. And I'm going to review a little bit of what I like, what I don't like. Most of what I have here is things that I really like, or they have unique stories. So we're going to start at the oldest starship that I own that doesn't actually technically exist, but yet it does in Star Trek. This is the Horizon. And this is actually, these on the black bases are from Eagle Moss Collection. And for the most part, these are fantastic. This was a ship that was shown on several desks. I believe in Deep Space Nine is the times it was seen, and in the background of his office for Cisco. And this ship is, I believe, a Daedalus class, and we see a version of it futurized in all good things, the penultimate series finale for Star Trek The Next Generation. And it's a futuristic version, so it doesn't look like this. But this was supposed to be the original Enterprise for the 60s show, and they rejected it, and they went back to the drawing boards. And so it was used as a early Earth vessel or early Federation vessel. And one of the books by Michael J. Friedman has things that they talk about this ship, I believe. Very, very good. I believe Starfleet Year 1 was the book series. Super fun. But this ship, quite frankly, it's ugly, but what's fascinating to me, and the only reason I have this is because it was on sale, because not very many people are buying it, because it's kind of an ugly ship. But it's interesting because it's everything that the original series Enterprise, and I'll show you, this is a little model I made. It's got everything there that led to this. The big things that they did were change the hull, the main body right here. They went to a more, just a better looking nacelle, okay? Instead of just big long tubes, they actually have something on the end to make them look like something different. And then it really looks like they just took something to the saucer, or in this case, the ball up here, and smashed it down to what we have now. And this is fantastic because this led to this. And that's why I appreciate it. It's not a good look, but yet it's kind of fun. It's so retro, it's ridiculous, right? It's just silly. But yet think about this as the 60s where they're looking back to Buck Rogers, they're looking back to other like Lost in Space kind of stuff, and I think that was just barely before them. This is what could have been, and it probably was pretty close, but instead we get this, right? And this model, it's so simple, but yet this ship is so elegant. And I think what makes it elegant is they learned from this, the Daedalus, they learned a lot from it and decided to go to the next level. And what they did was they shrunk down the saucer to make it more thin and make it kind of just look like it functions well, but yet it's kind of dangerous to be in some ways. The hole down here is very small, but yet good size proportion of everything. The nacelles are big. These pylons are very small that connect the nacelles to the body. The neck goes forward, which gives us this idea in some way of speed, of motion. And then when they have it moving through space, you get that effect. And so they really learned something. But one of the things that apparently was supposed to be that for a little while it was talked about that this would be how it would actually look on screen. And thankfully they flipped it beforehand. But yet at the same time, I kind of want to see a ship like this just to see if we could work with it, because it's kind of funny. It reminds me just of, I don't know what it reminds me of. It's interesting. Maybe a Vulcan warp sled from the original series. I don't remember for sure, but it's like the Miranda has the underslung nacelles later on, but that would be very different. And so the motion picture came out and they had Bunny, so they're like, hey, let's redesign the Enterprise because also we're gonna have way better cameras on this thing, so we should probably make it better. And make it better in some ways they did. I love the classic Enterprise. It's hard to beat it. And that's the other thing about the Strange New Worlds. They redesigned the Enterprise and it looks really good, but it looks a little bit more similar to this with darker hull plating. And I like it, but yet it's before Kirk's Enterprise. And if they're saying it is in the prime canon timeline, it's going to have to look back like that unless they're just saying, no, that was just what they imagined in the 60s. But anyway, the big difference here is, obviously nacelles are different. The ship's saucer is a little bigger, and the engineering hull is a little bit wider around. But also, what they did is instead of having pylons go straight up and down and curve outward like that at an angle, these are swept back, and so it provides another angle of speed and momentum. So we still got the same neck kind of style, and that's the beautiful thing about this. That another thing about Starship design is how does it look at different angles? Because one angle can look really good and another can be very different. In this case, the original Enterprises, they look really good from just about every angle. You can have this at almost any angle and it looks good. I think the worst angle in some ways is the side shot. I don't know why, but it just doesn't look as good. It still looks great, but it's not as good as some of the other angles. The original series Enterprise looks good from the side, although the nacelles are very tall. That's the one thing I could critique it on in some ways. But from the back, that looks actually good. And from the front, it looks really good because it provides a weird symmetry with the deflector dish underneath. Kind of interesting. And so from the top, looks fine, And bottom, again, looks great. So it's just one of those things that what we do, and notice I didn't actually paint the hangar deck on the very back end of the engineering hull. My bad. Makes me want to go back and fix that. But anyway, so after that, what we have is the Excelsior class that was shown in the Star Trek original movies. And this ship is actually a ship I both like and don't like at the same time. So it's, again, at certain angles, it looks really good, and other angles, I don't know. I think it struggles at times. This ship, it's both, and you'll see, like, so my model, because this, again, is my model, has some slight issues because that engine nacelle on this side is turned outward slightly, and I don't know if that's supposed to be accurate, but one of the things it does, and I'm not a huge fan of this aesthetic, is it has a straight bar across for its engine nacelles, and then it goes at a 90 degrees straight up afterwards. And so they really did a good job of, it's a smaller hull, saucer comparatively to the hull and the nacelles, But I think that's an interesting thing. And I say that the nacelles are very long on this. So it's a different ship. It does feel like it's going back even to the original Enterprise as far as that. But people regarded this as the a very beautiful ship, and I think it is. I think it is very pretty. This is the Enterprise B version because it does have these wide hips on the sides of the hull. But overall, this is a really neat vessel because it leads to a lot of evolution. I think this led to really the Sovereign class design because they looked at this and went, how can we improve on this? And improve they did. They changed a lot on this, but yet kept the idea and the shape the same. So after that, we get to one of my hands down favorite ships, and I'll show you exactly why, and I'll walk you through the things that I've done with this. This is the Ambassador class, the Enterprise C. Now, the Enterprise C is fascinating. All right, let's put it on the black base. That way, you guys can see the full effect. All right, there we go. So Enterprise C, right? So it is, from the front, looks pretty good, but you'll notice again, it has those 90-degree angles on the engines and they go straight across. That's the one thing I'm not a fan of, and I'll explain and I'll show you why too. But from certain angles, it looks fantastic, right? From the top, it looks really good. From the rear, it works. It's fine. The nacelles are beautiful and pretty. It looks like this interesting return to form to the original series, but also the TNG equivalent as far as the original series Enterprise, because this is supposed to be the predecessor to the Galaxy class. I also love that it has completely rounded saucer. I really enjoy that aesthetic of a completely round saucer. There are exceptions to that, but this is a beautiful ship. But alongside of that, and I think it's important to talk about, is I believe it was Andrew Probart that designed this concept of the Enterprise C. And this was shown, actually, they had done a painting of it, but also it was shown in the meeting room where on the wall with the different Enterprises, this was the model that was put up there with the gold models that were up there. And so it's a very interesting because it has the pylons they sweep up into the sides. They go forward slightly. It does have a very wide engineering hull. That's my one critique with it. Overall, though, the saucer, I really like it. It's a little thinner than the Enterprise C we got, but I fell in love with the Enterprise C the moment it came out of the wormhole in the TNG episode, Yesterday's Enterprise. But overall, this was a really fantastic concept. And what hit me was I used to play an MMO called Star Trek Online. I haven't played it for several years, really, at this point. But in there, they partnered with a printing company that you could design your starships and send them to this printing company, and they would 3D print and paint your ships. And so in the game, they would allow you certain customization. So if you bought, say, a Nova class starship, you could customize within a few science vessels therein. If you bought the Galaxy class, it would have certain ones like the futurized version with 3 nacelles. You could customize with that, the Yamato version, things like that. And they had the Enterprise C in there, and then they also had the Andrew Probert drawing and wall decoration one. And so you could actually combine those parts. And so I actually took it, and it's a little darker than what I was planning for 3D printing, but I really liked it actually when it came out. And so it's more like a blackish gray than anything. It's even got the deflector dish. There we go. Effect on there. Very pretty. So what I did is a lot of it is the concept Enterprise C and Ambassador class essentially. And what I did though, because you can see the nacelles are from the concept, I did keep the engineering hull of the Ambassador class regular, but it does unfortunately, because of these pylons, these sweeping wings, because I really hated the 90-degree turns on the wings, I instead had to go with the sweeping ones, which I loved, but unfortunately it also came with this ridge along the edge of the ship. And so it's not my favorite thing, but honestly, it looks really good. And so from the side, it looks really good. Really, really good. I used the saucer, like I said, from the concept art. But yeah, this is my version of the Enterprise C. And tell me that, at least from the top, doesn't look like a fantastic ship to see, warping up next to you, and from the side, I think it hits perfectly as far as that aesthetic, that perfect blend. But yeah, I was really excited for that one. But the Enterprise C, the Ambassador class, is one of my favorite starships in Star Trek, but there's a few that really match it. Now we come to my one that I do not have a model directly for, but I have a toy that was given to me by a great friend, and it was in their collection for a long time. They played with it as a kid, and so just know it's got some wear and tear on it. But this is the Enterprise D, right? The Galaxy class, and let's see if we can get it to do its thing. And it's slightly lighting up, and it's got a few effects on here. And the last button lets it fly through space. But overall, this is a fantastic toy. Like, this is insane. They don't make them like this anymore. Really, they don't. This is amazing. Now, here's the thing, though. I'm not a fan of this ship. I do not think this ship is very good. Here's why. Anytime you make a starship, especially Federation design, and you make a saucer that's going to be this way, they're usually not a good idea. There's one exception I think that really has done it well, and this is not it. Because it makes it look big, fat, and slow. It just looks slow. And it's supposed to be the flagship to the Federation. I mean, it's big and wide right here as well, but you won't notice as much because anytime it was in the show in TNG, which I love seeing it, but yet as its new ships came out and stuff, I was like, this one is not good. You would always notice this because it was massive and it would always fly into the screen and it would be like, wah, right? And why would you notice this honking thing? And again, fat stubby nacelles. Enterprise C has those as well because it's supposed to be a bridge between the old and the new, and so it's going to be similar to this. And I get that, but yet I'm not a fan of how these look because they're even more stubby to me in some way. And I think it's just because they're more flat even. And they just, I don't know. The other thing is, this has a crew of 1,014, and it could technically hold like 10,000 people. But with a crew of 1,014, there's a lot of empty space in this, and it's got families on board. It's just silly. It's just a silly ship, and a lot of people love it, and I'm glad because this got them into Star Trek, and that's fine. But yet, I'll be honest, not a fan of this because it's too big this way. That is too big this way. Does not work. There's only one exception to this rule on that, and we'll see it in a little bit. But Galaxy class, it's there. Now, we get into the Dominion War era / Borg fighting, and so we'll just kind of go through those. One of my first ones, and this one I love because it's weird and kind of ugly, but in its ugliness pretty, is the Centaur. So that's funny. It's a funny side profile because it's so small. There's not much there. And then you realize as you turn it sideways, there's still not much there because it's a very thin vessel. It's very tiny. This is itty bitty. And the story behind it is it's a kit bash model that they put together of, I believe this is like an Excelsior saucer and then other pieces that they found from other stuff. And I think the thing underneath it was a Miranda missile pod or something that they're using as their deflectors and whatnot and other things. So just it's a weird combination, but you see it just once or twice in the Dominion War, and I think it's just once actually in an episode. And I kind of fell in love with it because it was this weird little thing, and the story inside of Star Trek was they were running out of resources, and so they were literally kit bashing in the show, like actually in their universe of grabbing whatever parts from old ships that they could find and throwing them together and just hoping and praying it would fly. And the Centaur is that fascinating little combination. I just love the tininess of it. It screams patrol scout type vessel that's meant for combat, but it takes one good shot on a pylon, it's gone. You know what I mean? But it's so cool. And I say that, because every pylon on these are usually pretty thin, but just the way it looks, it just feels really, really, really easily broken. But it's just fun, right? And it's that round saucer aesthetic that they've slowly gotten away from too, as we'll see. The next ship, let's do this one, is the Norway. It's definitely an anti-Borg type vessel. This ship, and I need to get a steam runner at some point because they're a lot of fun as well. This has got a very massive saucer, but it's funny from the side, it does not look good. It is not a good design, and this is more a triangular design. Top-wise, though, this looks really good. And then, there it goes. Okay. And so from the side, it just looks kind of funny. From the top, it looks good. From the front, it looks awesome. It looks like it's going to attack you. It's just got that, when you're going to shoot the shot of this ship like that, right? It just looks offensive. And not offensive as in like, ooh, gross, but like it's going to go on the offense. And even from the back, you've got this interesting aesthetic of, you can see the impulse engines, the red down below on the saucer. And it's just cool, but like the side is not its best thing because it's just so thick on the actual saucer itself. So this one I just really enjoy because it's a funny thing. We saw them in First Contact for the first time, the Steamrunner, the Norway. I think the Akira had already been seen in Deep Space Nine, but those were at least the two that I can think of off the top of my head that were shown. The next one we need to talk about is one of my personal favorites for just fun designs, because this almost was the Voyager class starship, the Intrepid, right? The Voyager class starship, the Intrepid, right? This thing is called the Nova class, and it is a science vessel, scout kind of thing. It's combo therein, so it's very, very tiny. It looks kind of squatty, and I love this. I kind of wish it would have been Voyager's design, because I think it would have been a little better, because Voyager is not bad by any means, but the saucer is really big comparatively to its engineering hull, and especially its engines. Its engines are tiny. If they had redesigned the engines, and made them a little longer, I think it would have been fine. But this thing, it's just got a fun profile because it's tiny, and even its engines aren't really super long, but they're better than Voyager's. From the back, it just looks good. It's got a good balance there. From the front, it is one of my it just looks good from the front. It's got everything you'd want in a design. But this is a science vessel. I think it's also, I fell in love with it because of it's like yesterday's Enterprise. It's in an episode that's really good, and so it makes it even better, So we get to this next one, and this is the Akira class starship. From the side, it looks pretty good. Yeah, it's got that interesting cutout of the front right here, right? And so that's... Oh, and there it goes! No! Okay, I'm just going to start holding them from now on. I apologize that you won't get to see as cool of a shot there. From the front, all you can see mostly is saucer. From the top, where things get interesting, because you got this, I believe it was the Lightning from World War II aircraft that had these two, if memory serves. And this is really cool stuff, right? This is a ship that you would want to see, and it was beautiful. And the interesting thing is, upside down, it was essentially the Enterprise from the Enterprise NX-01 from the show Enterprise, that they redesigned it slightly and made it look, older, but this was the aesthetic that they used, was based on this, as though the Akira was based on an older design, which is okay. I think it's fun. But the Akira, what's interesting about it, if you'll notice here, its saucer is actually wider across. But why does it work on this? I think it's because of the design of the nacelles, because they're slung back, and they're also actually going underneath the saucer. They actually go to underneath the saucer, and they still, technically the saucer is lower than them because of how low it goes. But yet it's also their slung backs, which still gives it its idea of speed. I think it's also how the saucer itself is designed gives it this feel of still going forward in speed. And so it helps, I think, also with these, makes it feel like it works. And that's the way to design a saucer that's going to go longer widthwise. This works. The Akira is fantastic, and I want to see more of this in Star Trek. I wish they wouldn't just keep designing all new starships all the time, and would start using some of these things, because I want new starships. I do. But the new starship aesthetic, for one, is a little bit off. Windows on everything all the time. It's because of the new Star Trek movies with Christopher Pine. But this should still be in functioning Starfleet for a long time. It should be like the Excelsior was, and was functioning for over 100 years. That ship should be still in Star Trek Picard all the time. You should see this, right? This should be still functioning in 20 years, easily. They're going to update that thing. It's going to keep functioning. It's a cheaper ship to build than Sovereigns. Norways and Akiras, put those in the show, right? And I haven't seen Star Trek Picard Season 2. But I'm just saying that really bothers me whenever they did with the Excelsior in Star Trek Next Generation, because their budget was like, they couldn't afford it, so they're like, okay, let's just reuse some old models. It sounds silly until you realize that for aircraft and aircraft carriers and things, a lot of them have been in service for a lot longer than you think. Especially some aircraft, especially like flying fortresses. Some of those were in service, and some may still be in service from World War II. Granted, what's changed? Are they really the same aircraft? No. Are they the same aircraft, or naval vessel from World War II? Well, no. And most of those have been retired at this point because they went to nuclear powered vessels for aircraft carriers, for example. But they're going to update the things inside of them. They're going to gut out the stuff inside and go, okay, now we have this radar stuff. Okay, now we have this new technology that gives us way better stuff for a lot cheaper. We can install a computer in this thing that before you were lucky that you had a calculator in essence, or even less than that. You had to do it all by hand or by number thought. So it's just this interesting thing that should happen, that the Akira should still be in service. And we actually ironically see, I believe it's the Prometheus. That's another model I don't have and I want to at some point. We see that one in Star Trek Enterprise in the future when the Enterprise J is around and it's still flying around. You're like, this has been what? 150, 200 years, 300 years? And we got Enterprise J. And we don't know how long it actually has been according to that episode, but that's weird. Like, it's kind of crazy, but it's also kind of cool because it tells you there's a lot of room to just work with that. Last vessel, and I'll just have to pick this up and hold it, is the Enterprise E, the Sovereign class. Honestly, side view is really cool, but it's very thin, and so you don't get a whole lot of idea of what this is. So it's both a good view, but also a poor view because you can't see it all. The underside, it just looks like a really good stretched out Starship. It's kind of almost like you took an original series Enterprise or the Excelsior and just pulled it, right? And just stretched it. And I think it's fantastic because the top view, this is it. Like, this is the Starship. This is the one that it hits all the things for me. It goes back to the original series Enterprise. Right? As far as that basic form is there, but it's missing like the neck. And with the Excelsior though, it's even crazier because it's very similar design. And then again, that neck, they just took the neck out and went, we don't need it. It's smaller than a Galaxy class, and it doesn't need to be as big because it's not a exploration vessel in the same way as that one was with families and stuff idea. This is a more combat oriented Federation at this point because they've been attacked by the Borg and everything else. This ship on screen, it looks so good because it is flying by and it exudes because of its design that the nacelles are going backwards. There's not really a neck, but it feels like the saucer's flowing outward towards space, so it feels like it's going forwards into space, and this is going backwards. So it gives you this idea of energy and power going that way to go this way. And this is that design that you want. And this thing, there's you can see the Revere view. So sometimes it doesn't quite do it justice in a model, but in their movies, when this was shown, this is awesome. This is the ship. And so Star Trek has a wonderful bevy of starships, and I love seeing so many of them. But as I've said, there's things where they go wrong. And the biggest thing that they go wrong with oftentimes is making one part of a ship too big compared to the rest. So we see that in the Daedalus class, right? The engineering hull is way too big. This ball is just ridiculous. I mean, everything about this is overblown, and they shrunk down certain parts to make it work and also redesign them. And the Galaxy class, the saucer is too wide, too big in that direction. It works on the Akira because of how it's designed otherwise. Around it, they made it function well. And you don't even realize until you're looking at it from top or bottom that you're like, oh, it is actually wider than it is long. And it's kind of interesting, and I appreciate that. These are the things that Starship design, when they go into it, it takes time. I wasn't a fan, for example, of Battlestar Galactica, the ship in the newer show in 2005, until I watched it start firing and its version of shields, which are actually just flak layers. It's really cool. And so this is the thing that sometimes seeing it in action helps you fall in love with it. But overall, I've realized more and more the Battlestar Galactica more looks like a military ship, and I love it. And that's why I have a model of it too. So these ideas are so fascinating. You know, there's so many other sci-fi shows that give us ideas for ships and concepts. You know, and video games give us concepts for ships design. So what is it that you love in a video game or a show that's your favorite starship design and like universe? And be specific. Like if there's a specific thing, like you really love Halo and you love the Pelican, right? Or it's you love the UNSC Infinity, for example, or maybe it's a Covenant carrier or super carrier. You know what I'm saying? Things like this. What is it? Maybe it's Mass Effect and the ship they're in. What is the thing that really gets you excited in Starship stuff? Or maybe you are a Trekkie and you love it. So what is it? Tell me down in the comments below. I've been Cody from the Keepers of Nerdom. I hope you all are having a great week, and I will talk to you later. Bye, y'all.